Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Chapter 1, Week 2. You were able to review the introduction lecture, and as I mentioned in the lecture as well as emails, this class is a combination of two things. One, scheduled meetings, scheduled class time via Zoom, or lecture. I'm choosing to use lecture right now, and for one primary reason. I've discovered students manage their time better, particularly with the pandemic and everything, when I can record lectures. So I'm going to continue that. I will certainly let you know when we have a Zoom scheduled meeting. I will send you the Zoom link. I'll send you a meeting agenda. I will send you the meeting time, etc., etc. Everything that's required to set up a Zoom meeting. But for this week, it is Chapter 1 lecture. So let's get started. As I mentioned before, this is a business class, your business majors, in order to understand how your particular subject matter, this class, business communication, relates to business is via this flowchart. I refer to the foundation of business as the three-legged stool foundation of business because it has three parts, as the blue area indicates. It has financial management, operational management, and organizational development management. The OD is also known, organizational development that is also known as behavior management. So that said, three parts to the foundation, which the strategic plan, which is a communication tool that rests right on top, as the arrow indicates, right on top of that foundation of business. Foundation of business has three outcomes: sustainable employee engagement, sustainable customer loyalty, which leads to sustainable profitability. And we'll see this flowchart routinely throughout the class, because it's one thing to take a class in business, understand the subject matter, but now we need to understand the big picture of business, hence the foundation of business. So what's this commercial communicating? Take a look. What you've noticed in this Lufthansa commercial was the scenery did not change. There was a corporate traveler in a cab in New York City, and all the things you have to navigate as a business traveler in New York City. And the music in the beginning was horrific. The first time I heard it, I felt like jumping from the ledge. The second part of the commercial, the music was tranquil. And that epitomizes communication. We have control over the music we set when it comes to communicating. We can set the music on how we communicate. We could set it up, sadly, where it's horrific, stressful music, or we can set it up where it's tranquil, it's harmonizing, We have control on how we communicate in light of the emotions. As you think about communicating, think about which music you control. Do you create communication that is harsh, like the beginning of the commercial? Or do you create more tranquil? Obviously, based on which one we do routinely, indicates how well we communicate or how poorly we communicate. So what is communication? It is a huge word. When I think about communication, it reminds me of resumes. And I want to get to that in a moment. But what is communication? Well, business writing, business communicating, how sharing of information between people within an enterprise or company that is performed for the commercial benefit of the organization. Of course, a commercial benefit. We work for organizations, so there's a commercial benefit for the organization. In addition, business communication can also refer to how a company shares information to promote its product or services to potential consumers. Now, this is how we communicate to the consumer. But there's also business communication, how we communicate to each other within the organization. I can assure you this, if business communication is done well internally among the associates, that certainly exhibits itself to the consumers. If there's horrific music when it relates to communication internally among the associates, that will be reflected in how we communicate to the consumer. If it's tranquil music, that's how it will be communicated to the consumer. Again, we have control over which music we play. Communication is understanding feelings from information. Think about that for a minute. Understanding the feelings coming from the information. Communication is linked to core values. I mentioned to you during the introduction lecture that my core values are patience, peace, understanding, and truth. And how I communicate will reflect patience, peace, understanding, truth, and tolerance. If I do not know how to use my core values when I communicate, my communication level goes down. My efficiency of communication declines. If I link my communication to my core values, I can better understand the feelings coming from information, because I need to stay peaceful, patient, understanding, truthful, and tolerant. Notice the percentages here. 90% of our communication is nonverbal. It's written, it's the expression we have, eye contact, tone of our voice. 10% is the spoken word. I discovered this many years ago when I graduated from college and I worked in the marketing department for Anheuser-Busch in Orange County. And I didn't realize my face showed an expression that were different than my feelings. This job required us to go in early, but we were off early. So I was off by 3:30. And I had the rest of the afternoon. It was different if I got off at 6, like most jobs. But here I was out of the office by 3:30, and I had the rest of the afternoon. I was happy. One of the directors was in the parking lot, and we passed each other, and we knew who each other were. I was the low person on the totem pole, and he was higher up. And he said, "Wow, what's the angry look on your face, or what's the grim look on your face?" And I was thinking, grim? Oh my goodness, I'm actually happy. And that's when I discovered my face, my nonverbal communication, showed an expression, showed a feeling that I was not feeling, showed an expression I wasn't feeling. And that's where I learned to understand nonverbal communication. It's an expression, eye contact, tone. And in today's day of communication via technology, we can send the wrong message. I'll give you another example. I have a client, and every time I meet with the client, he's texting or emailing, and he'll say to me, as we're trying to go over financial parts of his business, he'll say, "Oh, I'm hearing you. I'm just multitasking," and I have to stop him and say, "Your nonverbal is telling me a different story." And also, it's impossible to multitask and expect to do every task 100% well. Impossible to do. Research has shown that's impossible. The best we could do is about 70% at best. So I knew what he was saying wasn't, he couldn't possibly comprehend everything I was talking about as it relates to financial management within his business. But that nonverbal, typing on his laptop, texting on his phone, that nonverbal was telling me that you're not paying attention. And again, 10% is the words that we choose, the words that come out of our mouth. And words are like bullets. Once they are fired, they can never go back into the chamber. So we choose our words carefully. I give many examples of people. I will say this here. How many of you have this button on your laptop or computer keyboard that says, "If I send this message, I completely am screwed"? Yeah, it's right there. Just look for that. It's called the send button. Many times we send things when we should not. It's okay to type things out of frustration and put it in a draft file, go back to it later. But we choose our words carefully, whether nonverbal or verbal. And we'll talk about that further throughout the class. I want to go back to what is communication as it relates to resumes. I did a pseudo survey over the years in all my classes. I've been teaching at the collegiate level for 13, 14 years, thousands of students over the years. And when I review their resumes, about 90, I'd say 90, over 95% will write in the top of their resume that reads career objectives. Terrific, great, outstanding, very good communicator. It's right there on the top of the resume. And I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years. And there's a technique called scenario interviewing, where I'll ask a question, a scenario, and I already know the answer, but I need to hear it from you. And I'll hone in on the top of a resume when somebody says, "I'm a very good communicator. I'm an effective communicator." So I'll ask questions, scenario questions on communication. And what typically happens is they're not as effective as they think they are. They're not as good as they think they are. And what I've discovered with students, though over 95% of the resumes, they clearly write it, career objectives, very good communicator. But the statistic that I've come up with based on this pseudo survey is about 66% of students say, "I could be better. I could be better." leaving 34% of students saying, I'm okay with communication. But right there on the resume, it says, I'm a good communicator. And the reason I've discovered is because the word communication is too broad a term. What is communication? It's like asking somebody to say, what is love? I love my dog, I love my car, I love my wife, I love hamburgers. I wouldn't want to be my wife compared to a hamburger. But again, it's the same problem. The word, the definition is too small. Same thing in communication. It's too big a word. Oh, he's a bad communicator. Oh, she's a good communicator. Too big a word. So we want to break down what communication is. As we know that communication is 90% nonverbal, 10% verbal. Look at these two groups. This group, they are committed. It says it clearly. It is a committed group of employees. But sadly, they're all going different directions. But they are committed. Look at this group. They are committed, and yet they're all going in the right direction. The interesting part among the two groups is they are both committed. So let's look at communication, the written word. What does committed mean? Because committed, like communication, is too broad a term. When you discover the root word for committed, means devoted. And when you discover the root word for devoted, it means to die for your cause. Wow, that changes everything, doesn't it? I'm committed to my job. You willing to die for your job? Now, some of the jobs are required. First responders, that's a requirement of the job, if necessary. Committed, when you drill down to its root words, to die for a cause, is fascinating because as I've done a study on devotion, committed, devotion, die for a cause, the author wrote that the hardest part for dying for a cause is to die to self, because sadly we can be selfish by nature as people. To die and give up one's physical life, yes, a tremendous sacrifice, cannot be understated. To die to self is just as difficult. Matter of fact, many will say it's even more difficult to die to self. That's how committed I am to my cause. I'm willing to put others before myself. Those are the people in the group on the right. The people on the left all go in different directions. They believe they're committed, but the communication is not strong enough to drill down to the root word. Committed, it means devotion to a cause where I will die for that cause, even if I have to die to my own selfishness, because it's not about me. Communication, 90% nonverbal, 10% verbal. Our goal is to become the group on the right. And we'll navigate through this class so we can pick up techniques in order to do that. Let's talk about active thinking. I want students to demonstrate the ability to think critically, also known as active thinking. Thinking critically means how well do I think under pressure. I want students to move from a standard passive thinker to an engaged active thinker, but in order to do that, we have to figure out, well, what is a passive thinker and what is an active thinker? And so here's characteristics of both on the right hand of the screen, on the slide. And make no mistake, we go back and forth, being passive and active. I'll give you an example. Students who are passive in the classroom, passive with their studies, sadly do not tap into their own potential, and they have a wealth of potential. Students who stay active as it comes to their studies, participating, being in class, sadly not now, but eventually, even online, staying on top of things, managing your time management is a big component. Those students who stay active, those habits follow them right into their chosen field of work. Right into their chosen field of work. But we are both passive and active. The goal is to stay active when decisions need to be made, when our best work is necessary. Look at the characteristics of a passive thinker. They receive ideas and information from someone else. They're not very reflective on that information. It doesn't mean a whole lot to them. They have a tendency to jump to conclusions, and this is the one that I recognize the most. They have a tendency to make snap decisions, irrespective to the outcome. And we've all done that. I've asked every student in my class, collectively, have you ever created a stress as you're trying to eliminate a stress? And every hand goes up. Of course we have. The goal is not to do that. And how we can change that is we use our core values in times of stress. Remember, core values used in times of stress is what carries good behavior. Now look at the characteristics of the active thinker. They're persistent. They give careful consideration. They think things through. They raise questions. They find relevant information. And as you're listening to this, I know we've been over this before. But I want to consistently engage with you about becoming active thinkers. Because the test was, how do I know I'm staying an active thinker when necessary? VAC will be demonstrated. As an active thinker, you're more versatile. As an active thinker, you're more adaptable. As an active thinker, you see many moving parts. In other words, you understand complexity. Make sure you're utilizing VAC. When you are, then you are engaged as an active thinker. I put in red here, what do you think of the chapter learning objective questions? And I can already hear the answers. If we were in the classroom, we would spend a lot of time letting people air out their frustrations from them, as well as their understanding why these are necessary. But make no mistake, they can be daunting, they can be time-consuming, they could be a waste of time, I've heard. But what they will never be is decrease your knowledge base of the subject matter. It will never decrease your knowledge as it relates to business communication. It will never do that. In light of how you feel, whether you're positive about them or negative about them, it will never decrease that knowledge. Because keep this in mind, in order for you to complete this class, I will have you apply the knowledge you're learning. I will have you apply the knowledge you're learning, and not through a multiple choice exam. And we'll talk about that more later. So when you continue to do the CLOQs, keep this in mind. It's all leading to something greater. It's never done as an act in futility. In other words, I just need you to be busy. I would never do that to students. I never have, never will, and I've never done that to my staff either. Everything would be used. We do not waste anything. So, let's talk about research discovered what we want most from organizations. This is a survey taken of associates, employees, and they're referred to as the 5 human truths. First one is a sense of belonging. The research shows more people join churches, or I should say join for the same reason they join churches, or for the same reason they join gangs, is because there's a sense of belonging. Second human truth is we need to be heard, not just fixed. What I mean by that is some of us will listen and we're very good at solving problems, but we're not listening. In other words, we're not validating. The person just needs to be heard. We need to be in control, not controlling, but in control. Control of our career, control of our work, control of our relationships. We need to be in control, but not controlling, and there's a difference. We desire to reach our potential, and that is the goal of education. That's why active thinkers, active thinking students tap into their potential. That's the goal. Can't be forced. Students have to find a way to tap into their potential. It could come through a mentorship, could come through good instructors, it could come through parents. However it happens, we desire to reach our potential. And we are uniquely fit for the position we're in. We're not disposable, in other words. These are the 5 human truths that organizations know that people want from the organization: a sense of belonging, to be heard, to be in control, to reach our potential, to become uniquely fit. The reason I share this is then is how we have to communicate. My staff, for instance, as it related to communication. I know the managers work many long days. And at the end of the day, when you're exhausted and you sit back as a manager and say, what did I really accomplish? What did I really accomplish today? I would have the managers keep a card in their pocket, the 5 human truths, and they would have to answer these questions. Did I create an environment people felt they belonged to? Did I genuinely hear the associates, customers? Were they in control? Or did I micromanage? Did they reach their potential today? Do I have a system in place that my subordinates know they're reaching their potential? Are they aware that they are uniquely fit for this position? And I'll tell you a quick story of how this galvanized to a manager I had in his personal life. We rolled this process out to all managers to reflect on this at the end of the day, and to also reflect if your superior gave this to you. 5 human truths had to be given and received. Superior to subordinate, subordinate to superior, subordinate to subordinate, etc., etc. And I went into his office and I discovered he had the 5 human truths printed and just above his laptop. Now, he was also a catalyst, meaning an individual that knew this technique worked and also trained his managers and associates in living these out in our behavior. So I understood that he had them by memory. But I have to admit, I was a little surprised that he had them posted just above his laptop. So I asked him, his name's Michael. Michael, it's interesting. You know those better than anyone in the organization, and yet they're printed. And he looked at me and he said, and I knew his story. He had been married 2 or 3 years, maybe a little longer. He said, absolutely adores his wife. And before they went out on their first date, it took about 1.5 years for her to say yes. But he eventually was able to court her, insomuch asked her hand in marriage, and she said yes. He was ecstatic. But as I asked him the question, why do you have those printed above your laptop when you know them so firmly? He said, I have those there to remind myself that I can work 6 or 7 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days. And I ask myself, my wife will not be around in another year. And I listened. I was taken aback because obviously he loves his wife very much. And he said, I'll be divorced in a year because of these hours that I keep. I have those printed on the wall because I need to communicate to her that she belongs, that I genuinely listen to her, that she is in control of our relationship, that she'll reach her potential in our relationship, and she is uniquely special to me. Now I'm starting to get tears in my eyes as he's telling me this story. And he says, I see that I have it posted above my laptop because I make sure when I leave in the morning, I have breakfast with her. I make sure I come home at night and she's not in bed because I've worked late, but we have a chance to have dinner together. And I make sure I do not work 7 days a week, maybe 6. And even then, that's more the exception. Because I know if I were to continue working 6, 7 days, 12 to 15 hours, I get up before she does and go to work. I come home, she's already in bed. That is not a life that she wanted. And I was so taken aback by his ability to not only understand the 5 human truths, but to deploy them in his behavior and communicate that effectively to his wife. Communication, 90% nonverbal, 10% verbal. It's important to remember that communication, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers survey 5 years ago, which hasn't changed much, says communication was rated as the top attribute desired by employers. Of course, when I step into organizations and I assess the foundation of business, finance, operations, and behavior management, the type A managers I talk to expect me just to fix everything so the money starts flowing in. And I said, if you want to control and manage your financial management platform and your operations management platform, then you better control behavior management. And not controlling, but behave. And within behavior management, the foundation of business is communication. How we communicate is more important than what we communicate. It's 90-10, 90% nonverbal, 10% verbal. How we communicate that is more important to what we communicate. So it does not surprise me at all that organizations find communication is the number one attribute desired. Hence, they'll hire for that, as they should. 1 in 5 projects is unsuccessful because of ineffective communication. Now, I know the date is a few years ago, but it has not changed. More people are terminated from their jobs not because they don't know what they're doing. They can't get along with others. Think about that for a minute. Communication is poor. Now, on behalf of the employee, the organization has to create a culture of communication. That culture of communication would be the 5 human truths: a place to belong, heard, in control, reach potential, uniquely fit. That's the organization's responsibility to create a culture of good communication. And then the associate needs to exhibit that in how they communicate. Communication as problem solving. Yeah, certainly. When a customer complains, look at these responses. How do I respond? In what format? When do I respond? What tone should I use? What should I say? In today's environment, with the pandemic, it seems like many people have a very short fuse. Consumers have a very short fuse. Associates can have a short fuse. There's a problem to solve. How do we solve it? So notice this. Communication is understanding feelings from information. We discovered that. Understanding feelings from information. And I refer to it as we need to build the Rudd infrastructure of communication. Take a look at that again, just for a moment. Rudd stands for receiving the information, is R. U, understand the information. And D, do something with the information. Because remember, communication, which is 90% nonverbal, 10% verbal, is understanding feelings from information. So, take a look at this. And I'm going to have you answer some questions. So let me know. Let me know what you think.
Can I help you? Name, please.
Seinfeld, you made a reservation for a mid-size, and she's a small. I'm kidding around, of course.
Yes. Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, we have no midsize available at the moment.
I don't understand. I made a reservation. Do you have my reservation?
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, we ran out of cars.
But the reservation keeps the car here. That's why you have the reservation.
I know why we have reservations.
I don't think you do. If you did, I'd have a car. See, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important part of the reservation, the holding. Anybody can just take them.
Let me speak with my supervisor.
Here we go. The supervisor. You know what she's saying over there?
What?
Hey, Marge, see those two people over there? They think I'm talking to you. So you pretend like you're talking to me. Okay, now you start talking.
Oh, you mean like this, so it looks like I'm saying something, but I'm not really saying anything at all?
Okay, now you say something else, and they won't yell at me because they thought I was checking with you.
Oh, great, I think that's enough. See you later.
I'm sorry, my supervisor says there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, it looked like you were in a real conversation over there.
But we do have a compact if you would like that.
Fine.
All right. Well, we have a blue Ford Escort for you, Mr. Seinfeld. Would you like insurance?
Yeah, you better give me the insurance because I am going to beat the hell out of this thing.
That last part always gets me. Yes, you better have insurance on it. So as we look at Rudd, this is the assignment this week, due Monday at midnight. Now don't forget, you have your chapter learning objective questions due each week. Don't forget that. This is in addition, as I mentioned in the let's try that again, the introduction lecture, that within the lectures you may find additional assignments, this being one. So you got two things to do this week. One, chapter learning objective questions, and the Rudd assignment. So we need to answer the first question. Was Rudd used? So explain how the information was received. Explain how the information was understood. And explain what did the associate do with the information. I need you to, so you're going to go back and watch the video again.
Can I help?
And then you're going to answer the three questions. How was the information received? Explain that. How was the information understood? Explain that. And what did the associate do with the information? Explain that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Reach out to me. You can send me an email, a text. If you do text, please write your name in the class and what your question is. Have a wonderful week.